Hey there, SARMLB fans. It is I, BK, back for another great SARMLB podcast here with Tennis. Tennis, how are you doing on this beautiful Saturday afternoon?
Pretty good, BK. I'm ready for another season, ready to get amped up, ready for the Cardinals and everyone else, all the other good teams in the league to start underway.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's been a great off season, but I am very happy to be getting back into it. Today we're just going to be kind of going through all the teams, just giving loose predictions, and you guys can follow along with your own predictions and send us hate tweets, whatever it is you guys like to do.
Without further ado, shall we begin?
We shall begin, and we're just starting right at the top with the top team, the Baltimore Orioles. Last year, they finished as the only team to win 100 games, which was the first time in maybe ever in the league. I've never seen it personally. Just shows that there's a very well balanced league right now. You love to see it. And over the offseason, the first place Orioles, they picked up PME, brother of Versailles, son of Commissioner Peyton, and they added some power in the lineup with Aristides Lavelle, Benito Harris, and then they go with the reuniting of the former agent Bragan Kelly and pitcher Alex Abercrombie. If you guys don't remember, Bragan Kelly was Alex Abercrombie's agent back in the day, and something about fixing his arm. I don't remember what he did. He did something like that, right? But
Indeed.
it does seem like that the Orioles got even scarier this year.
Right. You look at so many ways that this team could beat you. They could beat you with speed, they could beat you with power, they could beat you with pitching, they could beat you with defense. If one facet of the game isn't working for them, another can carry on that any specific day. So that's what makes them dangerous. That's what makes them the best team in baseball, in my opinion.
And the Vegas has their over under win total set at 111 and a half. Where are you going with that one?
111 is just a really high number. The Orioles are good, but as you said, they won 103 games last year. Are the power bats enough to push them over that mark? I don't think so. I'm taking the under.
I'm going bold here. Obviously, everyone knows that I'm such a huge Orioles fan, and I'm going as bold as can be. 120 wins, World Series champs. Book it. Over.
All right, we're writing it in the book. We're going to revisit this.
That's what I want. That's exactly what I want. Because most of my predictions are correct, as you know. All of them, actually. All of them.
Indeed.
And this won't be any different. Now we're going to go on to the second place finisher in the East last year, Toronto. And with that comes the hard talk of we lost a great member in Fritz, and that really did do a number on all of us. And one thing that I did notice with the new ownership is that they immediately put Jobert on the trade block, and it kind of it's making me question things a little bit, I guess you could say. Are they still going to be the same Blue Jays, or are they going to try to take a different route and just throw it all away right now while they still have these guys in their prime? Uh, Overall, I think they could still be a top team, a contender. But if the new ownership doesn't feel that way, then there's only so much that the remaining team can do.
Yeah, especially you look at Jobert's numbers. Maybe you thought he was a product of playing at Fenway, right? All those years. He had put up amazing offensive numbers, but can he do it elsewhere? And you look at his first season in Toronto, he could, in fact. He hit 260, OPS of 888, played stellar defense as always, manning a great center field, winning the Gold Glove. And it's just hard to imagine that a new ownership could come in, take a look at the production that Joe Bear's put up, and say, we have to move on from this guy. So it's really interesting. I think they could be a solid team as is, even though they didn't do a whole lot in the offseason. But that's normal for new ownership to just be getting their bearings.
Yeah, and we do see that from time to time when new owners take over. Um, good or even great teams, they decide they want to make it their own and just kind of shift things a bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. They did lose Jeffrey Keating as well as three or four of their top bullpen guys in the offseason. That really sucks. And if they try to go the rebuild route, it's gonna take a while to really bounce back. They have a very underwhelming farm system. Now they do have Odalis Paredes, they have Phoenix Lightman, MLB's not so little brother anymore. Adrian
Hmm.
Beltre Jr. just signed an extension last year. He does have a no trade clause and he's under contract for the next 9 years. But we could see something where a no trade clause gets waived if everyone else is out and he's unhappy. He hasn't exactly put out some stellar seasons yet. He hasn't had a 740 plus OPS year since his rookie year. So that could be another disgruntled quote unquote star, I guess. Uh, they've got the over under set at 91 and a half for this. It really just depends on what the owners decide to do. Because if they decide they want to go all in, then they could easily surpass that. Or if they decide they want to tear it down, then that's going to be a very solid under for me. So, what are you thinking? What's their strategy going to be this year?
Yeah, I think that if you look at their players, the people who are getting the big money and their ages, it looks like their window's almost it's almost closing in a sense. But make no mistake, this is a very talented team, and they should be going for it the next few years. The only misfortune is, of course, that they're in the same division as the Orioles, so it's harder to put together a playoff team winner in a division with the best team in baseball. But that being said, I like the over on 91. I think they get to 92 and make the wild card easily.
I'm going to take the under just slightly. I have them right about between 88 and 90 wins, upper 80s.
It's fair.
I still think that they'll get a wild card spot, no problem. But I do think that there are some holes that they didn't have last year, and that leads us on to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a team that went at 84 and 78 last year. They were flirting with a playoff spot, but didn't quite get in. They kind of fell off down the stretch. They signed catcher Kurt Gregg, who may or may not have something left in the tank, but he does add a veteran presence that has seen postseason success. If you remember, he was kind of a platoon catcher on that 2036 Astros team. They also went out and they spent some big money. They signed last year's Cy Young Award winner, James Bacon. And I love the moves that they made right there, but it also there's a lot left to be desired with this team. You've got a great pitching staff. You're good on offense, but the pitchers need defensive support, or else your team's not going to they're not going to do anything. They're not even going to see October, and that's something that's needed to be addressed in Tampa Bay, and they've just decided to turn away from. And it's unfortunate because there is a lot of talent on this team.
Yeah, Tampa Bay is a really interesting one. You mentioned Greg, the signing that they made. They also extended Philip Uribe, and those are fine players. They've been in the organization in Uribe's case for a while, but I just question whether or not their money could have been spent more productively. Like if you look at Greg, he's not even the best catcher in the organization at the moment. They have Keith James in the minors. They have a lot of good young players, in fact, and I just wonder if perhaps the money that they spent on Pierre Maeda, who's a solid defensive second baseman. I don't know if he's going to play, but if they could have combined the money they spent on Uribe, Greg, Maeda, and put it into that second base market that was kind of slow a little bit this offseason. We saw that there were definitely some unhappy players with the state of the second base market. Aiden Russell went pretty cheap to the Dodgers, etc. The Padres got someone, and I just feel like an allocation of resources that attack their weak points and then combined with them bringing up some of their young talent in the minors like Ricky Ball, like Cretella, the other Cretella, and some of their pitchers, in fact, like Xavier Price. I think that would have gone a long way toward making them playoff contenders this year rather than just spending another year in no man's land, unknown what they're going to do for the future seasons.
Very well put. And I think the Vegas hype got a little bit out of hand. Personally, the over under win total is set at 86.5 for them. Personally, I have them kind of around the 79 to 80 wins. I have them dropping off from last year. Are you thinking about the same?
Yeah, I think so. I think optimally, if they looked at the talent they had going into the offseason, looked at the cash they had, and behaved optimally, they could have been a playoff team. They could have been above 86.5. But as of now, with the current talent, I don't see it.
And that's going to take us on to another team who has some defensive issues in the New York Yankees. Last year, they won 73 games. Definitely not where you expect the Yankees to be ever. Even with the ownership group that they've had for the last 20 some years. And they went out, they got Carmen Jackson, which I think all but solidified them as having the best rotation in all of baseball. But once again, that doesn't matter if you don't have a defense to back them up. And for that, I don't see them improving upon that win total by very much at all this year.
Yeah, it's really tough because they have a lot of good players. They have a deep rotation. They got an amazing closer in Stanley Reyna, along with a couple of solid mid to back end bullpen arms. Like once they get to the bullpen, theoretically they should be able to shut it down. But other than Ivan Pavasi, it's not looking great for them right now. I mean, they should be able to hit their way into scoring lots of runs, but the defense, maybe they can shut down the run with Campos, the new catcher. But it's going to be an uphill battle for the Yankees once again.
Over-unders at 76.5. I'm taking the under. I'm going to give them about 74, 75 wins this year. What you got?
I think that's a good line. That's so hard. They just, at the three premium positions, they did bring in Geary, who is an IFA, and he plays solid defense. He hits okay at shortstop. You know what the heck? I'll go over 76. I believe in this team.
Wow. I'm glad to hear you say that because I don't know. This Delta 8's really good, though. I'll say that. I like it. So that leads us to my dog barking, and
by the way, that brings us into our sponsor for the day. This podcast is sponsored by Dog Biscuits, Brigg and Kelly's Dog Biscuits. Please shop responsibly.
That's Brigg and Kelly of the Orioles, right? Not to be
Correct.
confused with me. I want to make sure that no one thinks that I'm out here pumping my own brand.
No, he's paying you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Of course, you weren't around for the negotiation, but it was tough. I'm sure he's a hell of a negotiator. Now that's going to take us on to our last team in the AL East, at least last year. Maybe things are looking up this year. The Boston Red Sox, they're still rebuilding. There's really not much to see. The payroll's only at $58 million. Granted, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars out in loans to other teams. They're paying their division rivals to play for them at this point. So $58 million, they have the lowest payroll by a margin of $109 million. The second lowest goes to the Tigers with $167 million payroll. The only thing that I can say about this team is pray for Ollie Peterson.
Yeah, he's such a bright talent, and he got a debut last year, 61 innings, had an ERA over 7. It wasn't pretty, but I think the Red Sox really, how like in football when you get new draftees like Trevor Lawrence way back when, the team might not be good, but they try to build up the weapons that they have in the O-line so that they can help the franchise quarterback develop. I think that's kind of what the Red Sox did here. They brought up Ollie Peterson. They know he's going to be a stud. So instead of putting together the best team that they could, which, it's a couple years down the line, they put together the best defense that they could and to try to help Ollie Peterson as best as possible. Like you have Don Reyna, who is an amazing defensive wizard at second base. Shelvin Lawson, I hadn't even heard of him before. He projects to be one of the worst players in baseball this year, but he can play a solid first base. Anything hit on the ground to the right side should be stopped, along with solid defense all around. I think this is more of a year to help the young players like Peterson, like Caleb Hamels, like others develop rather than a year where they try to win games per se.
Yeah, we're still a few years away from really talking about them as being any sort of a threat anywhere, but they're definitely they're taking the right steps towards their ultimate goal of competing by the end of the decade. And Vegas has the odds set right about where they finished last year. The over-under set at 58.5. I'm going to go with the ever so slight under on that. Give me 58 wins, matching their total last year.
Yeah, it's going to be an under for me.
By a lot. Sounded
No,
very,
not a
very
lot,
sure of
but
that.
I like the under here.
Okay, that's fair. And that's going to take us on to our second division here, the AL Central. The AL Central was a lot of fun last year, about as fun as any division could be. All five of the teams were in the division race until the very last week. It was a good time. It was great for baseball. Viewers were up. The attendance was up. What's not to love? And Minnesota is one who came out on top last year with 86 wins. They added the best catcher available in Jeffrey Keating. They've got LaQuavion de Montrevious, who I think is going to be an incredibly strong MVP candidate, and I'm very excited to see what he brings to the table this year. Um, and also, Coyote is going to step up in a big way offensively this year. He's been kind of lackluster so far, but after watching him this spring, I'm all on the hype train, and it almost seemed like he got faster.
Yeah, I think so. I think he should be stealing more bases this year. I know he bagged 28 last year, 38 the year before, but I feel like he really grew as a base stealer in the offseason, spring training, working on recognizing the moves of the pitchers, going on first move for lefties, etc. You should be seeing him more in action this year, along with some of their pitching talent. D'Ambrosio, Robinson, Bartlett is a solid 1 through 3. I know they traded Neil Ward to the Cardinals, but they picked up Frankie Edwards as well, who basically is good enough to take over the Neil Ward role that he was occupying in Minnesota. This team is a favorite to win the division. It's a favorite to do well in the playoffs.
They're really doing their best St. Louis impression by only having four relievers, aren't they? They really lack the depth that these St. Louis teams have, and they're kind of similarly constructed to these past St. Louis teams that have been going to the World Series. So that's a bright spot at least. It's a very good team across the board. The over-under is set at 91.5 right now. Give me the over. Twins taking the division at 95 wins.
Yeah, I think they should be the favorite to win the division. This is a strong over-under number, but I have them slightly over 91 as well.
That's going to take us to our second place team last year. They actually got into the last wild card spot with a play-in game, and that is the Royals. They didn't really improve over the offseason, and they really needed to in order to keep up with Minnesota. Minnesota did a lot to get better, and the Royals seemed to maybe even have taken a step back. Really, the only thing they did was bring back Blade Bassett. Overall, just looking at the roster on paper anyway, and I know talking about the Royals on paper, you should throw it out the window, but that's what I'm going to do. And top to bottom, they're really unimpressive. The pitching's solid, but it just won't be enough to compete.
I don't think it'll be enough to compete as well, but you look at some of their stars. Vlad Cortella took a big step forward last year. He was an all-star for the first time in his career, hit 358 with an OPS of 1.018 and stole 86 bases. So, I mean, he's a superstar in the making. He's 29 years old. He's finished developing. We'll see what he's going to be able to do in the follow-up to his big year last year, along with some other big bats like Marion George at DH and the aforementioned Blade Bassett. They've got some solid pieces. I don't think they will make the playoffs, but it is another solid step for the Royals.
I'm going to pencil them in at 75 wins. The current over-under is 77.5, which really kind of seems like a little bit of a slap in the face based on what they've been able to accomplish the last few years. But I'm going 75. I'm still taking the under.
I think 77.5. Do I think they can go 500? Yeah, I certainly think they can go 500. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but This is a
They're
good
a gritty
line.
team.
This is a good
They're
line.
a gritty team. They pull out the close ones, and that's the thing that, like I'm saying, on paper it's looking like a 75 win team to me, but there's definitely a few games that they could flip around just by being a tough minded team that they are.
All right, give me the under, but I thought about it closely. It was very close.
Well, I'm sure that makes them feel a lot better about that. Now we're on to the Detroit Tigers. Last year, the Tigers. Wait. 1 second. I can't do the Detroit Tigers without doing this. Brought out a beer for Trish.
Oh
Um,
no, we have four more divisions to go, BK.
oh, I know, and I think that talking about the Tigers is going to make me take out about 3 or 4 of these. But last year, the Tigers finished just a hair below 500. They got 80 wins on the dot. They're a very fun team to watch. I'll say that. Defense and pitching, they don't really care about, but they can hit the long ball. Offense sells tickets, but defense wins games. I'm going to love watching this team this year, but I don't think that they're going to see any sort of postseason.
Yeah, what do you think about the fact that they kind of only have 5 starters on their roster and they only have 11 position players under contract at the moment?
Yeah, they like I said, they do have the second lowest payroll, only to the Red Sox, and it just seems like that in years past they've kind of thrown pieces together at the deadline, just trying to get a serviceable team together, just to try to make a playoff push. But the players that they're getting just aren't good enough to take them over that hump, and that's just it. Just seems like that's kind of what we're going to run into yet again.
Right. I mean, look at their depth. If their catcher gets hurt, they have no catcher. I really like this team, but it's just hard to see a viable path for them forward.
I agree. I agree,
They
and
got a
I
dude
think
playing center in Danny Snow who just makes errors left. So
I mean they got SJ. SJ's out there. He's fun. We like SJ.
is SJ? He's not playing. Oh my! SJ is not playing center as of three
Well, I,
twenty four Eastern on Saturday.
I don't know that um, all of the depth charts all the lineups have been updated yet.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I was going through all these teams, and as I was going through, I'm like, there's no way this is your actual team. And I think a lot of these teams are just going to wait till the final minutes right before opening day to make those last decisions. Maybe try to throw off that opening series opponent a little bit.
Maybe
Good
even bringing
strap
it
by
back,
you, Trish.
backup catcher or something.
Or maybe she just had a few too many martinis and hasn't gotten around to it yet. She'll get to it when she wakes up.
Perhaps
Over under set at 78. What do you got?
under
Under.
by a decent
I'm
amount. Yeah.
I'm gonna take the under. I'm gonna put them probably about 74, maybe 75 wins. So I wouldn't say by a decent amount. Do you think they'll? Do you think they'll be get a top 5 pick this year? Is that how bad you're
No,
looking?
no, no, not that bad, but bottom 10.
Bottom 10. Okay. About on the right track then. And that's going to take us to the unluckiest team of 2039, the Chicago White Sox. They had the second best run differential in the division, yet they finished fourth. And they might have missed their chance to take over the division last year. Last year could have been a stepping stone, a building block onto overtaking the Twins for the future. And I'm not sure if they missed the cut yet, because they did do some good things in the offseason. They got Caleb Ford, Thad Riley. They added Boykin and Vasher to the bullpen, which was struggling last year and was kind of the reason that they were losing those games down the stretch. So I do feel like this team did improve, and I'm going to say they have wild card potential. I'm not going to pencil them in, but I do think they will. It'll be down to the final week for them again.
I think so too. I think This team is strong. As you mentioned, Pat Riley, very good defensive outfielder. Caleb Ford has been a solid third baseman his whole life. When he moved to shortstop in Seattle for a couple of years, it was a little bit rougher, but still managed to pull off some above average stuff at shortstop, which is very impressive for a third baseman by trade. The interesting thing is they have a couple platoons going. Like, for example, Caleb Ford doesn't project to play against righties, which I don't know if that is the smartest move. Of course, is that Miazga? Who's that at third base that they have?
Um, I don't
Sorry,
even have
I
the
don't.
roster pulled up.
It's
At third base,
Miaz.
they've got it.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
I think
Miazga.
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 Siddharth
Miazga.
Miazga.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
he's hit
Miaza.
well. He
Miaza. The G's silent. G's silent.
sure.
Real
He
G's moving
bops a bunch of
silence.
homers. But, like you bring in a defensive whiz like Caleb Ford, you kind of want to see him play every day, if that makes sense. He's getting benched for
Yeah,
Mel Sparks. It's probably not. But yeah, this team is good. This team is good.
I do think even if Caleb Ford isn't in the lineup every day, he's still going to have a huge impact on this team. Just what he brings to the locker room, and I think no matter what, he's doing big things for them. So I'm not too worried about him playing every day. I would like to see him out there every day just because of what he does bring to the table on defense. But either way, he'll be all right.
Yeah, for sure.
And they had 79 wins last year. The line is set at 84.5 this year. What are you thinking on that one?
So I remember they were just really unlucky last year. I have a slight over here. I think they're 85, 86, but I could see it being under easily. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I'm going to put them in the probably 86, maybe 87, that 7-win range, but I'm still taking the over for sure. I feel good about them, and I do think that they will be in it for a wild card spot. I don't have an official prediction on that yet. Maybe ask me later.
We will.
And then that's going to take us to the last place team last year, but they only came in last by a couple games, so it was a pretty tight division, like I said, and that's the San Antonio Bandits. They finished last. They're in the playoff race till the very end, just like every other team in that division. But the problem is a few of these other teams got better. Some of them just stayed the same, like the Royals, and it seems like this team just got worse. They didn't make any noteworthy moves in the offseason whatsoever. They appear to have regressed, and I think they should really go after a full rebuild at this point.
Yeah, once they hit the big stars like Dom Battle, he's getting old. He's up there. He's 36. He might retire after the season. We'll see. Other big stars like Zima. Well, he's a veteran, but he's still 27. Some of their pitchers like Robert Lake getting up there a little bit. Mateo Escobar should a couple more seasons on his contract, then he'll probably be done. But it's a stars and scrubs roster. If the stars perform well and don't get injured, they could carry the team. Especially the top four or five in the lineup. I think Escobar, Battle, Zima, Alisher, who came over from the Dodgers. I think.
Yeah.
If they produce, this team could be a 500 team, along with Lake and Dodo at the top of the rotation and Gaines in the bullpen. If they don't, or they get injured, or the bottom falls out of the role players, then this team won't be that good. It's pretty simple.
All right, so official prediction, are they a 500 team? The line is set at 73.5, so Vegas isn't on your side if you do take them as a 500 team.
I think they're an over candidate for that. 73.5 is very low. Even if they aren't a 500 team, I think they could beat the over. I'm pretty confident in this one.
I'm actually pretty confident in the under on this one. And
Okay,
I'm going to go with 71. I think that's right on the money for them. I'm going to say 71 wins. I don't think that the star power is enough. I think it's enough to win them 71 games, but that's about it. I don't see them as a threat to even break 500.
This will be definitely interesting to monitor. I just think with this division, there's always a chance for something wild to happen.
There is, and that the division never
No.
fails to excite us. And that's going to take us on to our third division in the AL, the West. Last but certainly not least, as you know, last year the Rangers took the World Series. Seattle had one of the best records in the league. This division looks to be just as stacked as it was last year. And this year, Seattle re-signed Thorstein Machado, and then they went out and signed Anton Cage and Jason Reyna to complete their pitching staff. And that Anton Cage signing is going to be huge down the stretch for them. They're very well rounded and easily the biggest threat to Baltimore's preseason hype. The only thing is they need to pick up some depth. They definitely lack that severely, but that's only a phone call away. So I'm not feeling too worried about that part.
Yeah, I mean they have defensive wizard at second base, Miguel Escobar the third, and he didn't really hit much last year, but he more than made up with it for the glove. He's getting paid a lot of money, but
A lot of money.
yeah, a lot of money, and along with Ivan Samos, former Cardinal, former Cub, who is still chugging along at the top of the lineup, very solid production, and they're deep. The rotation is solid, even though they could get a better fifth starter. Vandale is probably the best closer in the game at the moment. There's a lot to like about them, but is it enough to push them over the 105.5 win total you have? I don't know. What do you say?
I'm taking the over. I'm going to put them at, we'll say 100. We'll say 106 wins. I think 106 wins is a good spot for them. I think we're going to have a few 100-win teams this year after only having one last year. I think we're going to have to make up for it. The law of averages always wins. So I'm going to take the over with 106.
I think this division is just so good that, especially with some of their fifth starter games that they're going to run out with Max Watts if they don't improve there. I have the under right now. I think they should be in a fight for the division, but hard for me to put my money on the over right now, looking at the current state of the roster.
Perfectly fair, especially when you look at the competition in the division. And that's going to take us on to the defending world champion Texas Rangers. And they did what they had to do this year. They locked up Jason Jones for the foreseeable future. And then they went and signed an ace in Wilmer Washington. They got Ishida in free agency as well from Detroit. And then they signed another pitcher in Clifford Jones. I think they will be even better than last year's title team. Doesn't exactly mean that they'll run it back again, but I think they've put themselves in a very promising situation.
Yeah, after the surprise run last season, people were wondering how they're going to follow up because this kind of moved up their timeline a whole bunch. They will hopefully get full seasons out of their new pitchers, like you mentioned, Washington and Jones, along with Hal Burns, who returns. The three-headed monster in the bullpen, Trevert, Smith, and Martinez, is still going strong, and they have incredible on-base percentage. Now, some of that translates into home runs. In the case of Seager, Yubahor, Yoshida, they hit a lot of home runs. Gatto at the bottom of the lineup is a great threat from the 8th spot, whereas they get guys on, they hit home runs, profit.
Now, I gotta say they really love lefties. Most of their position players are righties, but all 5 of their starters and 3 of their relievers are left-handed. Do you think that will play any major role in this season?
Hard to say because their starters struggled a little bit last year, but they tried to minimize their innings. Even Hal Burns was running a 4.65 ERA. Fun fact, Hal Burns, for all his hype that he got, has basically been in the fours the last 6 seasons. His last great season was with the Padres in 2032, and he's still coasting off that hype a little bit too much.
He is really
Yeah.
coasting off that hype because that was that was someone they were talking about as being the next guy up, and he really just hasn't gotten out of that role. It's really unfortunate to see.
Right. But I think if they just once again deliver some of the innings to the bullpen guys, that could make things work. And now I know that Tommy John surgery has kind of been down since Peyton took over as commissioner back in 2014. You don't really see many injuries costing guys much more than 45, 50 games anymore, but you never know. Weird stuff could happen. And if they lose one of their bullpen arms, one or two of their bullpen arms, like the whole thing could be crumbling down really quickly. But let's just pray that modern medicine keeps the Tommy John doctor away.
Well, it definitely helps when the MLB immediately after Peyton started in 2014 legalized any drug. We've seen got a lot of steroid usage. Guys are popping Vicodin like Pez out there to keep themselves going. So the injuries are really unknown at this point for the most guys.
True, true. It's great for the on-field product, but who knows how it'll affect. Maybe someone should do a study of former retired players who played in this era, see what happened to them. It'd be
I think
interesting.
it's best that we don't.
Don't touch it.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we should. I don't think we should check in on them. That'd be.
I mean, you
Why
got
not?
you
Why
got
not do
some
it?
from former players. You have some amazing Twitter presences like Tanner Bell, of course, among others.
Yeah, there's some
Uh,
good ones, but I think that the MLB's done a good job of silencing the rest.
I
Done
see.
a
I
great job.
see.
But
Interesting.
the over under for the defending champs is 97.5. And I know you went under for Seattle before because you mentioned the such a competitive division. I'm going to go with the over again on this one, and I'm going to pencil them in for let's say 90. Going back and forth between 98 and 99 wins. 98 sounds prettier because 99 I would feel bad that they didn't get to that triple digit mark.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that they get to 98. I like the over here.
And now we're going to go on to San Jose. Last year, they really wished that they had the expanded postseason because they lost a play-in game for the final wildcard spot to the Royals. And now this year they've got it, and they it seems like that they got a lot better actually. They got Seacon, who has a lot of speed, a little pop to the lineup. They beefed up their bullpen with Vidal and Robbie Bullock, and their defense is good, not great, kind of a bend but don't break kind of defense. The real glaring issue on this team is they don't have a full time third baseman rostered. And I think if Toronto winds up selling like we're kind of thinking they might, then San Jose is an absolute lock for the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. It almost seems like a match made in heaven with some. Uh excuse me. I totally missed it. What did you say?
Uh, no third baseman. I think that if Toronto winds up selling, then I do think that they're locked in for the playoffs this year.
Okay. Sorry, I was confused because I thought you said that Toronto was going to sell to San Jose, but yeah, the
I
third
mean, they might.
baseman.
They might.
They might.
That,
Yeah,
that
they
could really
might.
work out.
I was looking at who Toronto has at third base, but yeah, it's a little bit of an issue. They're gonna make a lot of errors at third base. They might have found some new money ball inefficiency, but just I feel like there's some solid third baseman out there on the market that they get for cheap. They have $7 left in cap space. There's Mark Lost, Charlie Lamb, both serviceable third basemen. If you need a pinch hit for them, bring in Briones or someone. But at this point, it doesn't seem like there's any logical reason to not be carrying a third baseman, in my opinion.
Last year they finished with exactly 85 wins, and that's exactly the Vegas mark for this year. Over or under?
Ooh, 85 wins. Under. I think they're talented, but I think their problems at defensively at second base and shortstop will prevent them from getting over the top.
Well, like I have with the last two AL West teams, I'm going to take the over again, and I've got them right in that same wheelhouse as the White Sox with an 86, 87 wins. It's going to be close, and I think those are really going to be the two that battle it out for that final spot.
Yeah, it looks to be a tough race. up ahead.
And now we've got Anaheim. They didn't sign a single free agent. They lost Wilmer Washington. That's it's really not a good look. And they've got a solid young core, but at this point, it seems like they might have even taken another step back. And I know on SARMLB.com they actually have them projected to finish above 500, and I don't see that happening at all.
You know what's funny is that the Angels signed the Rangers farmhand Randall Rosenthal to the big money deal last offseason, and now the Rangers are picking up the Angels, kind of who came up through the Angel system, Wilmer Washington. I know he was, I believe, with other teams before. Was he?
No, he was
No.
drafted
Oh,
by
yeah.
them. They
Okay, yeah.
actually they went 1 and 2 in the same draft.
Oh, yes, yes.
Rosenthal was
I
first
do
pick,
remember
and
this.
then yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
old
that's an
Braden Kelly
interesting.
back in Anaheim took him Washington at 2.
Yeah.
He hasn't really done what he was expected to.
Do you regret not calling up the Rangers, making a move, trying to get up to number one?
Well, I can't speak for what Mr. Kelly from Baltimore did, but I will say that he offered 5 first round picks in just to move up one spot. And oh god, what was the guy's name at the time? I can't think of what the owner's name was, but he wouldn't take it because Anaheim had 3 first round picks that year. Then, or it was he offered the 3 first round picks that year, including the number 2, a first round pick the following year, and then I think a third round pick that year as well. And they still wouldn't take it. They really wanted Rosenthal, and they got him.
Yeah, that Rosenthal, most hyped prospect in a long time. He kind of hasn't pitched up to expectations except for that 2036 season with the Rangers, but he's still young. There's still time to live to this contract. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this crossover was because do you think the fact that they paid Rosenthal meant that they couldn't pay their homegrown player, Wilmer Washington? And that's kind of what's led them down this spiral because they're paying some big money to Duckerai, Opiemi, Rosenthal. They got some big name contracts, $18 million to a reliever named M, who is good, but he hasn't shown much that he's worth $18 million in the 2 seasons he's been in the big so far.
I don't I don't believe in that at all. I think that even if you don't have the money, you sign your homegrown talent, you sign your star pitcher, or should be a star pitcher, really underperformed in Wilmer Washington, and you figure out how to make it work. You see plenty of teams. The Padres are really good at it. The Orioles are kind of doing it now, where they'll take on all these contracts, sign the big money, and they figure it out later. They'll go and trade whatever they need to just to keep those players in. And I think if you really want to keep Wilmer Washington, then they would have. I don't think there's a whole lot of fight in letting him go to Texas.
I see. That's fair. And it just it seems like the money issues will almost compound over the next few seasons because Levon Bryant is going to get big money soon, along with Masa Nagao, Brady Hartsfield. A lot of these guys their contracts are coming up, and they still have Opiemi, Johan Fernandez, Rosenthal under book, and it's going to be hard to try and make money for these guys.
And now Vegas has the line set at 80.5 wins. I'm going to take the under by a little bit. I'm gonna put the Angels as, we'll say, 75 wins this year.
I'll take the under as well. I think they're slightly below an 80-win team.
And that's going to take us over to the the Vancouver Vespers now. Third name change in the last, 15, 20 years. Last year, they finished last in an already tough division. They had 69 wins. But this year, they went out. They immediately re-signed William Frederick. They signed Zach Rivera, another one of those relievers from Toronto. They got a solid core to work with, but they still have some holes to fill if they want to be taken seriously out west. I do think they're only a couple years away from being serious contenders in the AL, but this just isn't the year.
Yeah, I think that their whole rebranding scheme is good long term because you kind of shake off the cobwebs. I know they won a World Series in Vancouver since they moved there, but it had largely been not a great success since their move over from Colorado. But now you rebranded, you got some good core pieces, young talent, and things are looking up for them. I agree with you. I think they're one season away, and it wouldn't surprise me if they made some noise this year, especially with Hank West taking another step forward. He's been an encouraging prospect for them, along with some of their other talent. But I don't see it happening this year, maybe next year.
72 and a half, up or down?
Over 72 and a half is fair. This is still a very good team. I think it would be a stronger contender in another division. Uh, but yeah, Tyler Rice last year of getting paid big money at $46 million. After that, it'll be 10. It'll be be 30 million player options for the next 2 years if he wants to stay, and they'll have some money to fill the holes to supplement the young core that they have. For this year, it'll be over 72 for me. Next year, maybe we'll see a 500 team.
I'm also going to take the over. I think the biggest thing that's keeping them from really flirting with 500 is just the fact that this division is so top heavy. I'm going to go ahead and put them at, we'll say 70, 75 wins again. They'll tie with Anaheim for that fourth spot, and definitely very promising going forward.
Yeah, for sure. They have a brighter future than a lot of the teams in the majors that are floundering because you can clearly see the vision that they have toward what they want to do.
So now I think we're going to have to get a moment of silence here. And that is because we lost a very great owner, a vice commissioner in Williams on the Mets. We're still trying to recuperate from that. It might take a few years to really stop feeling pain. Sorry, that
Yeah,
got dark.
he was
That got dark.
he was a huge part of this league. He kind of brought it up to speed in the early 2030s. Taught me as a podcast host, taught the Cardinals owner a lot about the game and how to approach PC. And his legacy will live on in the Mets. We wish him the best. And I know that sometimes things get in the way and you can't keep managing your teams, but he was such a bright spot in this league for sure.
And we have no idea what comes with the new ownership. It doesn't seem like they're going to do anything with the team that they've got, which is the smart thing to do because this team is still a title contender. They still have the best defense in the league, and the pitching staff's regressed a little bit, but the defense is really the focal point, as it has been for the last 10, 12, however many years he's been around. And I do think that they're still going to take the division. Absolutely.
Yeah, they should be solid division contenders, World Series bound. Just because there's a new owner doesn't mean the players get any worse than they were. So,
No.
yeah.
And Vegas has them at a 95.5, which is just an ever so slight drop off, mainly because they didn't really do anything. They were going through that management shift and didn't really get onto signing anybody. So they've got a 95.5. I'm actually going to take the under. I'm going to put them right at 95. So not under by much, but still enough to take the division again.
I like the Mets for the over.
And coming in second last year was the Philadelphia Phillies. They're a little bit of a surprise if you remember their meltdown in 2038 that broke their playoff streak. They bounced back last year, won 89 games. They have a good pitching staff. The defense isn't really anything to look at. And honestly, I'm not really blown away by the offense either. I'm kind of leaning towards them not coming back to the playoffs next year. But I could be persuaded. You think you can persuade me?
Well, let's just look at the roster construction first before we
That's a
delve
no.
into whether or not they can make the playoffs. They have solid pitching, right? As you mentioned, the top three can stack up with the best in the business, even though Abercar is a bit wild sometimes. Um, he had 24 wild pitches and 7 hit batters last year. He's among the league leaders every single year in those categories. But the main problem I see with this roster is that, there's a lot of jokes about how the Cardinals hate relievers, the Twins don't hate relievers, all sorts of teams hate relievers. But look at the Phillies. They're spending $25 million on Dexter Murray. They're spending $26 million, and it's an escalating contract on Teo Millis. Uh, it'll be $1 million more every single year, and they're spending $27 million on Cesar De La Fuente. And I know that De La Fuente has had some issues with his stamina before. It seemed like he couldn't finish off innings. Now, in his prime, he's a little bit better. Seems like he can actually close out the ninth inning, but it's just that's way too much money to be spending on guys who will deliver you like 250 innings tops for all three of them. And you think about how many innings you need to get as a team, and you look at what that money took away from. If you examine who's playing shortstop for the Phillies, who's playing the corner outfield positions, you got guys that very few people have ever heard of. Akbar Bovary in right, Jared Greer in left, Kobe Shadix, and at shortstop. None of those are stud guys. They're serviceable players, probably bench guys on most teams, but they're forced into starting roles on the Phillies simply because of this poor resource allocation. And it's for that reason that I don't think the Phillies can get back to the playoffs.
How far do you think they fall off? The over-under set at 82 right now.
82, I think they won't be a 500 team. I think they'll be under. The Nationals are improved. As we mentioned, the lines are good. They will not break 500.
And obviously, I'm also taking the under. I'm going to put them somewhere in the 74 to 76 win sort of category. I think that's a good fit for them. Now, we're going to move on to a team that made some great improvements in the offseason, had one of the best, if not the best, offseason of anybody, and that's the Nationals. Last year, they fell just short of the playoffs. I think they missed it by just a game. And they go out, they sign George Savage, they trade for Dylan Teixeira. They got both Teixeira brothers out there. Now, real quick, who's better, PME and Versailles or Teixeira's? Don't answer that. We know the answer. But another great brother duo united in Washington, and that's awesome. It's great for the league. They re-signed Tyler Russell. They signed Sid Ailman. They're just really solid all around. And I think this is a team who could very easily dethrone the Mets this year.
Yeah, we always say these about a lot of teams, but the top three rotational guys for the Nationals, Waldrop, Marshall, and Brett, they do stack up among the best. They have a solid closer in Weston Fuller. They are paying decent money for him. He is only making $5 million a year this year, so some cost savings there. And they're solid all around at all positions. You would maybe like to see a little bit more production from shortstop, maybe like to see a bigger bat at first base. But all in all, this is a top 10 roster in my opinion. And they should be poised to break into the postseason once and for all.
Absolutely. And Vegas is believing the hype as well. They have the over-under set at 90.5. I'm actually going to take the over on that. I think they're a solid 92-93 win team this year.
So they won 87 games last year, as you mentioned. They added some pieces. 90, are they a 90 win team? Maybe, maybe not. I think this is a really good line. If I had to stake my money on it, I would go under, but I do think they will make the playoffs. And I know there's like a fine window where this team could win fewer than 90 games and also make the playoffs. I don't necessarily know if they'll be there, but just probabilistically, I think that they are under 90 wins, but I do still like them to make the playoffs.
Now, here's a team who's trending in the opposite direction, and that's the Braves. They finished fourth last year, just a game above London. And at this point, there's not very many redeeming qualities about this team. They're not a complete dumpster fire like some of the other teams in the league, but they're also not any sort of threat to make it to 500. Right now, they've just kind of been adding pieces just to keep treading water and stay on that same 74, 75 win pace that they've been at for a while. and it's just keeping them out from the top 8 draft picks. And at this point, you just got to tear it all down.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what new ownership does. They, along with the Mets, are the two teams in the NL East that got new owners this past offseason. They made a big trade with the Lions in which they took on a lot of contracts, including Miloslav Lavelle, who's making $17 million dollars for the next 7 years. He's a solid hitter, an okay defender. He hasn't really shown it yet, but it was that, some other contracts that are expiring after the year for the rest of the Lions draft. And one can make the argument that that means that they are a little bit tearing it down. They're willing to take on the salary in order to get the better draft capital. But as you mentioned, the rotation is just too good to be one of the bottom teams in the league, and they're in a tough division. It's hard to see a plan for this Atlanta team. It's almost similar to another Atlanta team, how they were doing in the late 2010s, early 2020s, back then, the Atlanta Falcons. They're sort of in no man's land because they do have a lot of youngish players. Like Brody Giles is just getting his start in the bigs, but it's just like players like him that will prevent the Braves from doing a full teardown. And I don't know. I don't know what path they could take to get back to the playoffs.
There isn't a direct one at this point, I would say. And right now they're sitting at a 71.5 win margin. What are you thinking?
71 is low. This is a tough division. Let me check who they're projected to have in the lineup.
Under.
Are you giving me subliminal pressure? I don't know. What
It's under.
What if this is the year that Myron Butts breaks out? You know, you never know.
Well, they've only been saying that since he was 18 on Anaheim.
All right. I'll go under against my better will. I wouldn't put money on this.
I might. As you know, I put money on everything SARMLB related. Excuse me, MLB related. I don't know why I always say SARMLB. What would the SAR even stand for? Doesn't make sense.
I don't know. It's been MLB for course history.
Yeah, it's been MLB the entire time. SARMLB just, I don't know, it kind of rolls off the tongue, but I don't think that you can make the SAR stand for anything. So
you think Babe Ruth was calling it SARMLB?
He might have been. We'll have to look back on that. We'll have an answer by the end of the show. We're gonna go on to our international team, owned by a GC Group.
Hey, that implies that Canada is not international.
Our overseas team, the London Lions. How's that?
Perfect.
The Lions had a huge offseason, really. They signed Josh Benjamin to a 10-year deal. They got Adrian Larson. They got Ike Joseph. This team is clearly not afraid to commit to stars long term. And the only glaring hole is their defense up the middle. They got Brixton Buxton up in the majors, and of course, everyone knows GC's love for the Buxton family. So it'll be really great to see that. But at the end of the day, Brixton is not his father. He's not that stronghold that's in center field like his dad is. But you know what? He's sure as hell gonna try.
Yeah, that he is. If there's one thing you know about the Buxton family is they go all out on the field. And whether or not the advanced metrics say that Brixton is or is not a solid defensive center fielder, you know he'll give it his all. He'll make some amazing diving catches. He might not have the range that other outfielders may have, but he'll look good while doing it.
And last year they fell off significantly. I can't remember exactly how many wins they had the year before. They were definitely up in the 80s, and they had their first postseason appearance in London, and then they completely fell off, and it didn't seem like they had changed enough to completely fall off. But I do think that they right the ship this year. The over-under is set at 80.5. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to put them right at 85 wins. I don't think that is enough to get them into the playoffs, but I'm not going to write them off from the playoffs at all.
Yeah, I think they're going to be one of the teams looking outside in with maybe a shot to sneak in if things go right. But one thing you do mention and you do notice is that Ike Joseph had kind of a down season last year compared to his previous two in 2037 to 2038. You want to see him turn it around. He's a big star, as well as Young Ho Lee. uh, who played really well last year. So if those two can kind of set the table at the top of the lineup, that takes more pressure off the young guys like Quinlan and Buxton and even Jim Lease, who will be a 24-year-old rookie starting in left field. Don't know how the bat will play. He didn't seem to do that well in spring training, but, defense is solid. So I do say that they will be a 500 team. They will be over 80.5 wins.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Now, I know you're a big Cardinals fan, so I'm actually going to let you do the intro on this one.
Sure. So we know that, and BB fan kind of mentioned that the Cardinals were running into a little bit of money problems this offseason. Had to decide who to bring back. They ended up trying to bring back everyone. Alex C. Smith returned on a big extension. Aaron Bradshaw returned on the qualifying offer before he got traded to San Francisco for salary relief. And they re-signed Jared Martin to a top-of-the-market deal, coming off his 2 MVP caliber seasons, 0 actual MVPs. But, as you know, H. Tennis, the Cardinals owner, likes to wheel and deal, and it seems like there are very few holes in this team. They traded some top picks and top prospects for Brian Washington, Neil Ward, and in the center field, Oberyn Picardo. Picardo, of course, is not going to hit much with the bat, but should man a good center field. He infamously has not made an error in his professional career. We will see if that continues this year. Ultimately, with the top of the lineup as strong as it is, carrying all throughout 1 through 8, with the exception of Picardo, with the 3-headed monster in Alex Smith, Macaulay Bellamy, and Brian Washington, along with workhorse Prudencio Hutmaker, who had his best season in St. Louis by far, and Neil Ward heading up the bullpen. This team is very top-heavy, but it is, as always, a tough out in both the regular season and the postseason.
And the biggest question out of spring training for the Cardinals is when is Jared Martin, finally going to get that first MVP? He's 28 years old now, and the last couple of years he's put up incredibly strong cases, but he's fallen short. So when's it going to happen for him?
Yeah, I think he just missed a stretch of time last year where it seemed like he slipped out of the voters' minds, and they ended up giving it to that Philly guy. But at this point, we wonder, is Jared Martin slowing down? Is he even the best player on his own team anymore? With Nikolai coming up and coming, there's a lot of talk about around those parts. But I think that Martin will have a strong season. Whether or not he wins the MVP, maybe he should have 1.5 by this point. But it's up to the voters.
It is up to the voters, and I'm one of the voters. I did vote for him last year, so don't throw any rocks at my windows, Cardinals fans.
Indeed. As for the over-under, Vegas has set them at 96. I like the over there pretty strongly.
I also like the over. I'm going to put them, I want to say they're hitting triple digits this year. They'll hit triple digits this year. Overs all around.
Yeah. That even though the Pirates did get better, hopefully they should be able to improve on their season last year with some better offense, some bigger production at catcher and third base than they were getting last year, along with some better defense.
Absolutely. And that's going to take us down to our next team, the Cincinnati Reds. They finished just a game out of the division last year. It really came down to the wire. They went out, they re-signed their ace, Lesko. They brought back Gardner, they brought back Nicholson, and then they had the late off-season addition of Hiram Thompson, who seems to be at least a slight step up from Guerra. Maybe not anything that's going to be groundbreaking. Might add another win or two in there, but I'm not. It's a solid team, but I'm not overly impressed with any aspect of the team. I do think that they'll still compete for a wild card spot, but if they do get in, I just don't see this team having enough to carry them far in October.
That's fair. This team, it seems like after the Cardinals won the division again last year, it seems like everyone forgot that the Reds were actually leading the division for the majority of last season, except they faltered a little bit down the stretch. As you mentioned, it doesn't look like there are any weaknesses on this team. There might not be any overt strengths either, other than maybe Jared Gardner at first base, but they don't have many holes. And in a game like baseball, that's almost as important as getting the top end guys. This team could compete for the division, should compete for the wild card, and although they don't scare anyone in the postseason simply because they don't have many big names that guys have heard on a national stage, even though, as we know, the commissioner does a great job promoting the game of baseball around the country. Still, it is a little bit of an uphill battle to get some of these Reds players on the name recognition side of most of the Americans these days. They have Felix Stewart, who was a good player back in the day, but maybe a little bit over the hill now. I know he had a great season last year, but, you know, this is a solid team. I like them a lot.
Now the over under set at 88.5. Do you think that you like them enough to put the over on that?
Do I like them? Who did they lose? Did they lose anyone?
Um, I don't have anything in the notes as far as significant losses go.
I think with the improvement of the Pirates, I will not pencil them in for the over. I will have them under 88 and a half.
I also have them at under 88.5. I'm going to put them right kind of in that same little category that I put the Lions in. I'm going to have them at maybe 83, 84 wins. Now
Yeah, it'll definitely. Yeah.
last year we gave the Astros a lot of crap on here, and don't get me wrong, it was all deserved, but I do feel a little bit bad. And I'm just looking at the team and seeing what they did in the off season, which was absolutely nothing. They didn't actually make any moves in the off season, and it's so frustrating because they have a team that they could that was inherited from the Bean Seven, and they've had so many opportunities to take this team to the next level. They could be in the position that we're talking about, like the Orioles or the Cardinals being in right now, just being that dominant team. And they don't seem to have any desire to actually improve on what they have. And there's been a lot of talks of mismanagement in the lineup. Obviously, they don't have a manager, and they let the fans vote for the lineup every week, which brings Colin Hogan into the lineup every day because he's big in the community. He's great, all that, we love it, but it's not. You're not going to see much success in the long run over that, and it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the projected lineup for the upcoming year, there is good news on the horizon in that Colin Hogan, bless his heart, amazing for the community, is not projected to start many games for the Astros this year. They have a new player in Molina at DH. Oh, sorry, he's not a new player. Why did I say he was a new player? He played.
Why did you say that? How dare you?
I'm sorry, Mr. Molina. And they also have Norman Tucker manning first base. He had an amazing season, over a 950 OPS last year, along with the staff and the relievers they're bringing back. I do think they could have used some more depth at the reliever position. They are currently projected to give fourth-round pick Scar Robinson his major league debut as the third reliever in the pen. He is, shall we say, he gives up a lot of hits. He has great stuff, but for some reason, he just gives up a ton of hits. Like, his stuff stops working halfway through the inning or something like that. And I'm a little bit worried, to be honest, to see how he performs at the major league level if they do end up not bringing in a veteran reliever and giving Scar his opportunity at the big league level. And that's kind of what prevents me from having the Astros higher, just that lack of depth in the bullpen.
Scar is a very peculiar case. I do remember watching him some in high school and college, and he was so dominant. Then he's a top recruit because even as a sophomore in high school, he was hitting triple digits on the gun, and his fastball tops out at 105 miles an hour. But the problem is, it's easier to catch up to at the major league level, and when you're a one trick pony. You might get a lot of strikeouts just by blowing guys away, but you're going to give up a lot of hits. And I don't see that changing for him. Hopefully, they won't give him many opportunities. Maybe he can just be a garbage time guy. Let him develop a little bit. But I really do fear for the safety of that man.
Yes, especially with if he's throwing heat, heat's getting hit back at him. He better have one of the hard hat caps that Peyton has kind of mandated around the league more or less in recent times.
And now they finished with 88 wins last year, got themselves a wild card spot. They got the over/under set at 87.5. How are you
Okay, so
feeling about that?
I'm feeling good because they brought everyone back, uh, and the rotation looks solid as ever. And Colin Hogan will not be starting as projected, but if he does, they might not make the playoffs. But as of now, I think they are solid enough with Brian Gonzalez, Taylor Patino, uh, Harper Lane, Jaden Fielder, just solid defensive studs all around. I am taking the over.
I'm. This might be the best line yet for me, and I'm so in between. I'm in between 87 and 88, but just because I really want to go against you, I'm going to say 87.
Yeah, whoever crunched the numbers for these at Vegas, they knew what they were doing for sure.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't me when I was drunk last night. It was
No, of
Vegas.
course not.
They're on top of their stuff. So I'm going to take the under just to be contrarian. And then we're going to go ahead and move along to Pittsburgh. Waller's out, Woodle's in, new face, same traits. Despite losing Sammy Fay, this team has improved. They turned a pitiful pitching staff around by signing Barreria and Ledviskin. And then they went to the bullpen. They picked up Hunter, Chandler, Aberg, and there was another guy in there that I can't remember right now.
Nakai?
Nikai. And I think the offense will be decent too, but there's too many holes in the defense overall for me to think that this team is ready for anything serious. I do think they'll be significantly better. I am more than impressed with what the new ownership has done, and I'm really excited for the future of this franchise.
Yeah, especially since they're developing their farm. They have big first baseman prospect in Alvinson coming up soon. But the only thing that worries me is they're relying, after the departure of Sammy Fay, who was, of course, one of the best shortstops in the league, they now have tabbed Chuy Machado to play shortstop, which he has not done since the 2034 season. We're talking about 6 years since this man has stepped onto the field to play defense in a major league game. How do you think that will play?
I mean, as I remember, he wasn't a bad fielder necessarily. He definitely wasn't winning any games with his glove. Um, I do recall him in Baltimore. He tried to get out there and he fielded batting practice a couple times, and so he's at least stayed loose out there. They always told him to at least be ready to go just in case they do need him. So I don't think that he's missed too much of a beat on that, but I do think that he's much better suited as a DH, and they really should look for a long term option at shortstop with the departure of Fay.
Yeah, for sure. It's just the middle defense. It's even worse than it was last year when Tadakat's Honda put up an amazing rookie season, won Rookie of the Year, even though he was 29 years old, but he was an international player, so as such got that rookie status and looks to build on that for an impressive sophomore campaign. Things are bright for the future for the Pirates. It's just hard to see a short-term path to success, if that makes sense.
I think that if they're kind of fighting for a wild card spot in August, that I could see them, or excuse me, in July, I could see them really taking a stab at getting some defensive help and really trying to push them over and try to at least try to get in. I could see that, and I think they could potentially be capable of that. But for now, I'm going to put them right about 77 wins, which is the over on their projected 73.5 for this year.
73.5 is a pretty low number. It is a tough division. 68 last year. Do I think they're better? They did a lot of stuff, but I think losing Fay hurts a lot. I'm going to go with the under.
Wow. Just spit in his mouth, why don't you?
Hey, they could have
Now,
brought back Sammy Faye if they wanted to, kept the
yeah,
ball
but
rolling. But
why bring back Sammy Faye when you can bring in all this pitching help?
exactly, why bring back Sammy Faye when you could sign an overpriced veteran to play shortstop who hasn't played shortstop in 6 years? Exactly, right?
It's a work in progress. I'm on Team Pittsburgh, just so everyone's clear. Now, I don't like talking about this team because it makes me sad every time. And that's the Cubs. They finished an abysmal 59-103 last year. And I can't say that they actually improved at all. You know that one thing that the Cubs didn't need? Yeah, relievers. They went ahead and signed two more high-end relievers. Now, the Cubs' projected starting five rotation is making a combined $29 million this year. The top five guys in the bullpen are projected to make $46 million this year. So they're not going to actually compete for anything until they start taking their starting rotation seriously, along with the rest of their position players. They keep throwing money at these relievers every year, thinking that it's going to help them. But when you throw a reliever into a 5-0 game, he's not going to score any runs for you. He's not going to help you do anything. He's going to get a lot of
Yeah.
holds. I'll give him that. You guys are going to lead the league in holds.
Well, ownership has kind of been beating the batting average drum for a while now. And Coach Birdie, I believe, was quoted as saying that the organization wanted to shore up the defense as we were pretty expletive when it came to errors and the D ratings. We saw several late inning plunders the last several years. So we went after sure-handed defensive guys, lights out relief staff, and turned the lineup into a poke it into the hole, get on base by any means, and we will try the small ball approach. Now, BB fan has been mentioning this the last few years in that it is hard to put together a competent offense in Wrigley. As we know, the wind is crazy. But it seems like the Cardinals were able to successfully do it last year after they moved into their new park, which is equally as pitcher friendly as Wrigley is. Um, the Cubs have not been able to do it. Maybe they should look into more guys who can hit home runs, speed, get on base, rather than looking at the batting average, because that clearly hasn't been working for the past few years.
Yeah, that's really all there is to it. And they're projected to be right about where they were last year. The over-under set at 58.5. I'm going to take the under on that just slightly. I've got them coming out at 58 wins this year.
Yeah, the one piece they did add that may be a positive for their team is Juwan Lee. I know that the rotation is having some issues, but I will take the over on the Cubs. I think 58.5 is low. They won 59 last year. I think they're a little bit better, but we will see.
Now we're going to jump to the NL West, and I'm actually really excited to get to the NL West. And this team is no exception to that, and that's the Dodgers. They won the division last year, and they made some great improvements on defense where they were lacking. They went out, they got shortstop Ian Rose. They got a not Walter Trotsky, Blair Trotsky. That's his name? Blair? I think so.
Yes,
Blair
Blair is the
Trotsky.
big third baseman.
He was the one who went like 1 for 30 in the postseason for the Orioles and wound up getting run out of town. So, you kind of feel for the guy. Hope he can have a bounce back year. And then they went and got Zachary White to stick in center field. Now, the one potentially head scratching move that they made was signing catcher Brian Brown to a 2-year deal. Um, I think Brian Brown's a fine player, but I do think they are definitely better off with Bixler at catcher this year. They did go out, they signed Maurice Anderson to solidify a very strong rotation. Then they got Kurt Hall to close games out this year. I think this team is ready to win the division again.
Yeah, and it's even scarier when you look at not only the on field talent that they have right now, but the draft capital that they've accumulated. Uh, in this year's upcoming draft, the Dodgers have 7 first rounders and 5 second rounders. It almost looks like they're going to have a 45-man roster crunch in the near future. Like this is 12 out of 45 guys on the 45 that they're potentially drafting this offseason. That's like 25%. So they're going to be needing to make some tough decisions in the future. But for now, on-field product is good. They're a rising team, have some nice prospects. It's looking good. It's looking like back to the glory days for the Dodgers.
Could be back to the glory days, and Vegas has them taking the division again with the over-under set at 95 this time. And on that one, I'm going to take the over. I think Los Angeles dominates, and they win 97 games this year.
Yep, I'm taking the over as well. This is a bad division, and the Dodgers are the best in it.
Love to see it. Love to see it. Now we're going to move on to the second place finisher, and not second place by much. The Gamblers went and got Nolan Perez, Sidney Wise in the free agent class, and it gave their rotation a much needed boost. Now it's just there's only so much that they can do to compete with the Dodgers, and I do think that they are a wild card team this year. But they're still a couple pieces away from being the true contender.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They're doing something really interesting where Bossy is not a strong defensive shortstop, but he's going to play shortstop. And then they have Eric Pike, who can play all infield positions. They have him at third base instead of at shortstop. And then DHing is Darius Jackson, who's not a great hitter at all. So it's just an interesting jumbling up of the pieces there. I know that they spent money on the rotation and the pitching instead of on the lineup, and that makes sense. But it's just for $27 million with Bossy. You'd like to get a little bit of a better hitter, a little bit of a better defender, and we'll see if they let him walk after this season. But I think the Gamblers' future is bright. They have a Kershaw who will torment the Dodgers for years in the minors. Excuse me. Yes, they do have a Kershaw. They have Cooper Kershaw, who's 19 and already looking like he might be better than his father.
Okay, let's slow down.
Okay, let's slow down indeed.
Yeah, we're talking about a Hall of Fame Clayton Kershaw here. Let's slow way down. Actually, you're going like 80 and a 35 right now.
Okay,
you don't need to tap the brake. You need to slam on that bitch.
All right. But in any case, I do like what the Gamblers are doing. They brought in some nice pieces to kind of make a run at the postseason while not mortgaging their long-term future, which is kind of what I would do if I were in the position. So,
now, right now, Vegas has them being even better than they were last year, and I think that's some local media bias. Personally, the over/under is set right now at 91.5. Now, I think that they could flirt with that. But ultimately, I'm gonna have them. I'm gonna give them 90 wins this year. I'm gonna take the under on that.
I do have to go with the under as well. I don't think they're that good as 91 wins says. It should be about 500, but under.
Now we're gonna move on to the team I've really been excited about this whole offseason. I've been really rooting for them all offseason, and that's Arizona. The PME trade sparked what turned out to be a very successful offseason for them. I do think that they may have reached on the Hobson and Herb Andrews signings, but I think the additions of Sammy Fay, Jeremy Hernandez, and Colin Kelly will give a much improved team in 2040. They could use the boost on defense, like a lot of these teams that are kind of in that, flirting with 500 potentially type of teams. All of them seem to be lacking defense, ironically. And I do think that this team is really only a couple small pieces away from being legit and competing with the Dodgers for the division.
I agree. Actually, looking at this team is pretty good. They still have a great Pablo Childs at 41 years old. And I know that, it's probably been a decade almost since he was relevant because he's been on so many teams since then. He's bounced around, but this man is still good. He is a future Hall of Famer, and he leads an offense that includes Sammy Fay, Fyodorov, Filipowski, and Colin Kelly, who is an amazing defender. And they have a solid rotation. They added Jeremy Hernandez, as you mentioned, and they have a good bullpen as well. This is a good team. This is like objectively a good team. This is, I would say, top 5, top 6 team in the NL.
And I'm going to say right now, they're going to be the 2042 NL champs.
2040. Okay.
Write
All
that
right.
down. Are you
I'm
writing it?
writing it down.
Are you writing it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And the over-under set at 80.5, which I'm going to take the over on. I think that they have a lot of potential. They could be a heck of a lot better than what I'm putting at. But for the moment, until they really show me what they can do on the field, I'm going to put them at 82 wins, just above 500, and really rooting for them and hoping that they can surpass that.
Yeah, this is a strong over for me. One of the best bets, uh, best over under bets for me. I mean, they played the Giants and the Padres 19 times each, and that's like 16 wins apiece. They get to 32. That's already like they're 40% of the way to 80. It's a strong over case for me. I'm putting my life savings. Okay, I'm not putting my life savings. I'm putting my car on it.
Your car? What do you drive?
Yes, a nice Porsche.
A nice Porsche. Oh.
Yeah, podcast hosts make a good deal of money these days.
Well, not me, because apparently you get all the endorsements. I'm going to I'm gonna not put my Porsche up because I don't have one, but I'll put my Honda Accord up. How about that?
Sure. If we both win, then maybe you'll be able to trade up for a Porsche.
And once again, I apologize for the dog barking in the background. He's really trying to get in on that promotion of Bregan Kelly's dog biscuits. I told him he's not getting a cut no matter how much he barks. Now I'm gonna move on. We got two more teams left. Knock this out. They're kind of similar teams in terms of how they've finished in recent years, and that's the Padres and the Giants. There's a lot going on in San Diego right now. I don't think we're going to be talking a lot about their games, but I think we're going to be talking a lot about their locker room. Right after they signed Marty Holloway, who was freaking out about not being quote unquote respected. He felt that he was disrespected and not receiving offers, and he only received one quote unquote lowball offer from the Gamblers. I think that Marty isn't as valuable as he thinks he is, and whatever. The Padres went and got him. Right after they do that, Simon Bartley, who announced his retirement after being traded to the Padres, decided he's going to pop back in. So we've got a little interesting dynamic going on at second base this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now that's not
Yeah,
even including the fact that 20 of the guys on their staff were all relieved of their duties for the year. They're all suspended for the year due to some workplace issues going on, and it's now being run by an intern that he doesn't even have the password to look at the roster. So I don't know how they're going to fare this year.
on the one hand, that means they can't make any more trades with the Nationals because they always seem to come up on the short end with that one if the intern isn't even able to access the roster. On the other hand, if they do somehow manage to find themselves at 500, close to halfway through the season, they can't upgrade to make a playoff push or anything like that. It is interesting because it's projected that Bartley and Holloway will be platooning right now, so that means either a $28 million guy or a $37 million guy will be sitting on the bench. And it's just hard for someone to be a player manager in this day and age. I know Juanito Tchaikovsky is trying his best, but keeping players happy while putting yourself in the lineup, while dealing with all the politics that managers have to deal with these days, talking to the owner who is in the Bahamas, talking to the intern who doesn't have the keys. It's a lot for Tchaikovsky, and I think if the Padres are even halfway respectable, he has my vote for manager of the year.
Absolutely. And you know what? If that intern whose name I can't even remember because we probably won't hear it after this year, if he does see any even tiny bit of success, then you could be looking at him taking over as the GM. We'll see. We'll see.
That's true. Stranger things have happened.
Vegas has reacted to the news of all of this that we've just broke down for you. And they have the over under set at 55. That is the lowest over under in of wins in the history of Vegas betting line. And that's pretty rough. I don't think they're going to be that bad, but you never know how these locker room issues can affect a team. I'm gonna take the over on it though. And I do think that they can win 63, maybe 64 games this year.
I'm going to take the over as well, but just with the caveat that it's only because this is the lowest line ever in the history of Vegas, and people are sort of meme betting the under. I think that's how it got so low, but I think the smart money is on the over.
And what's funnier even is that the San Francisco Giants actually got the third lowest over under in the history of the betting lines, and that's at 56.5. The only real good thing they did this year was getting Whelan Nemick, and I still don't think that's enough to get them out of the basement of the MLB. That 56.5, I'm gonna take the over on again, but not by much. I think they're a 57 win team this year, guaranteed top 3 pick.
I think they made some shrewd moves this offseason because they had a lot of cap space, and then the Cardinals were in a little bit of trouble, so they managed to get Aaron Bradshaw for basically cash. But other than that, it's not really looking good for the Giants. The one thing I will say is that they do still have their first round pick for 2041. So if this is another disastrous season, they won't be giving away the first overall to a division rival.
At least you hope not.
At least you hope not, indeed.
Now that kind of finishes up all of our predictions for the division. Now we're just gonna run through real quick, do our predictions for MVP, Cy Young, and then the World Series. So you want to start us off with your AL MVP?
Sure, I think this player who I'm predicting will be the AL MVP is in a big spot in a very talented lineup. Guys get on base for him. He gets on base. He'll be driven in. He'll score a lot of runs. He'll have a lot of RBIs. He's fast. And the person I have projected to be the 2040 AL MVP is Ford Sweat of the Texas Rangers. And I know that he may not seem like the best hitter on the team. Hans Gunter Seeger has an argument that he is the best hitter on the team. But, the voters hate voting for a DH. They like voting for someone in the field, someone who plays an important position like second base. I know that the advanced metrics may not say that he is as great of a defender as he looks, but the fans love him out there. They chant his name, Sweaty, 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 every single time, and I think he loves being in Texas.
I believe the MLB started issuing fines for opposing players calling him sweaty on the field. Is that right?
That's right, but the fans have now adopted it as a term of endearment, I believe. That is how I checked last time I checked in on the situation.
You love to see it. Love to see that. Such a great progression he's had. And he's a great candidate, but I'm all in on the LaQuavion Demontravius bandwagon this year. He is the Twins. He's the face of the Twins now. No more Neil Ward. He's out. Demontravius, he looked great in the spring. He's just, if they can put him at the right position this year, I think that he could honestly run away. He can run away with the MVP.
Yeah, another very talented young player. There's a lot of good young players in baseball nowadays. It's very exciting to see for the future of the league.
And then we're going to drop down to, we'll go with the NL MVP. And it looks like we've both actually picked St. Louis guys. And it's funny because the guy that you picked was actually my second place vote. And I'm going to go with Jared Martin. After 3 years of falling just short, I think this is the year that this has to be the year he takes it, right?
I think that there could be an argument for him winning even if he isn't the best player, just because the voters have felt bad over the past few seasons. There's a new voting pool. There's a couple of nice new young owners who might look favorably on the fact that Martin hasn't won an MVP, even though he's a deserved one, and kind of retro give him an MVP in a sense. But my pick is who I think is the better player on the Cardinals, and that's Sam Nicolai. He's only 20 years old, looking to have an explosive sophomore campaign after he got a cup of tea in 2038 and had his first full season in 2039. Was an all-star last year, stole 56 bases, and should just be a very solid player all around.
There's a lot of media hype behind Sam Nicolai, so I could definitely see that propelling him in the voting a little bit. Not to say that he wouldn't be deserving of it, but he does seem to have just a bigger footprint on the league in such a short amount of time, which is crazy to think about, even looking at what Jared Martin has done.
Indeed, indeed.
Now we're going to switch over to the AL Cy Young Award, and it looks like we're actually on the same page for once. Take
We
a picture,
are.
folks,
We
because
are.
it's not going to last very long. For the
Yes. And
first time, we agree on something, and that is that this year, finally, Charles Holt is going to break through, be what he was supposed to be when he was the number one pick 10 years ago,
the prince that
and
was promised.
Prince that was promised. Charles Holt, Cy Young, book it. I slammed my fist on my table. Next week we're going to experiment with some video podcasts, so you'll actually be able to see that in real time. I should probably put on a shirt next time.
Hmm. Indeed, Holt is the best pitcher on the best team, on the best defense, on the World Series favorites in the AL. It's hard to see. I mean, he has the best odds right now to win the Cy Young, but it's hard to see someone else take it at this moment. It is Holt's Cy Young to lose.
Now with my NL pick for Cy Young, I got a little interesting with it. Now, if I told you that I picked a pitcher from the Cardinals, you probably wouldn't be very surprised. You'd probably assume that I was picking maybe Smith or Bellamy, but I'm going with the newly acquired Neil Ward for Cy Young this year. This would actually be his second Cy Young. I believe it was 2030 when he won it last, and I really think that he's really the only. Let's be honest, he's the only good reliever in that bullpen, and I think they're going to use the hell out of him. I think he could potentially be a 200 inning guy this year. I'm all on the Neil Ward wagon. Neil Ward, 2040, Cy Young 10 years apart. Let's do it.
Yeah, if that happens, we'd have to get our stats interns on it. Has it ever happened that a pitcher has won the Cy Young 10 years apart in two different leagues, much less a relief pitcher? That would just be impressive on all sorts of levels if he was able to do it.
Our
However,
stats guys are going crazy in the back room.
yes, please figure that out for us, John. But my pick is not Neil Ward. It is Maurice Anderson, who is the ace of the Dodgers. The Dodgers did a lot to add to their defense this year, bringing in the aforementioned. I believe they brought in Diaz. They brought in Ian Rose. Ian Rose was already there, right?
Nope, they got Ian Rose, they
Oh,
got Zach White, and then the third
Trotsky.
one was Trotsky. Yes, I try
Yeah,
to
and
forget him.
just these additions are just very, very solid. And you know that voters find it hard to separate actual production from defense. And Maurice Anderson is a very talented pitcher when he has a great defense behind him. And he should be able to win lots of games. The voters like some of that. And I believe he is going to be the NL Cy Young.
World Series prediction, go.
My World Series prediction is that the Los Angeles Dodgers will beat the Baltimore Orioles in a thrilling Game 7 and will win the World Series in 2040.
We're gonna have some problems if that actually happens.
Indeed.
Me and you, not the
Yes,
not the
yes.
Orioles. Yes,
Of
just
course.
so we're clear, I will have a personal issue with you if that happens for even bringing that up, for putting that into existence, because I am taking the 120 win Baltimore Orioles in a 5-game World Series, taking out the Nationals. I really think the Nationals are going to be one of those Cinderella type of teams, if you will. They're going to make a run, but it'll be just cut short this year.
Yeah, it should be an exciting season to watch. Lots of good teams, lots of potential playoff spoilers, if that makes sense. There's teams that could be better than expected. There's teams that could be worse than expected. There's a lot to like about this baseball season.
Now, did you want to throw any more of your shameless plugs in there? Any promotions you're running or anything, so you can go buy yourself another Porsche or another $3 million house? Yeah, I saw the pictures. Thanks for the invite. No kidding.
Yeah, so I've got a nice realtor, John Smith. He's looking to sell you a nice $3 million house if you're looking for it. He's all over the world now. He now has a private jet, so if you need to buy a house or sell a house across the country, he'll be able to get there in 2 hours. and I am getting 15% commission on any houses he sells. On any houses he sells, so he gets the commission first, and then I get a cut of that as well for bringing it on the air.
15%. 15%.
You
I
should do some of
tried.
these.
I tried getting a local used car deal, and they just laughed at me and hung up.
I'll teach you some. I'll teach you the ways of negotiation.
Please do. That's what we'll be talking about as soon as this is over. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in. I know this was long. This is going to be the first one that I put on YouTube because SoundCloud wasn't really cooperating with me the way I wanted to anymore. And hopefully I can put those little the tags, whatever those are called, where you tell them what minute
The timestamps.
it is. The timestamps. There you go. I was trying to think of that all day. So I'm going to drop the timestamps in, so you guys probably won't be listening to all of this. But if you do, I really appreciate it. I know this was insanely long. We covered a lot. So I'm really, really looking forward to your feedback on not only the pod, but moving things to YouTube indefinitely. So definitely let me know on that. Send me all of your predictions. Send your hate mail to HTennis, and good night.
Good night and good luck this season.